One thing I don't get is how people still deny chemtrails. You know, for a lot of us it's common knowledge and it's easily observable. People see the shit and they still won't believe their own eyes. Their intuition is broken and they're easily manipulated into agreeing with complete nonsense from the mainstream media. And sometimes the mainstream media even does stories on chemtrails and the programs that utilize these things. Let's look at some comments on a random chemtrail video. Why don't you take off your tinfoil hats and gain some reason or knowledge of aviation? Hey, look guys, there's condensation in the sky. It could be poison. It's a conspiracy. Easily the most ridiculous conspiracy theory I've ever heard. People need to learn how to science. The people that believe that 9/11 was an inside job are nuts. On a scale from 1 to 10, they are about a 9.5 on the idiot scale. If you believe in chemtrails, you're a 10.5 out of 10. You probably believe that little green men are coming to your house and probing your anus while you're sleeping. You guys realize that's water vapor, right? No, the retards think we're being poisoned. Nothing is being exposed here. Chemtrails are a fallacy. They are fucking contrails that do not dissipate. If you read a full, in-depth scientific study on the subject, you would shut the fuck up. The scariest thing about these conspiracy theorists is that they are willing to abandon logic and science because it doesn't support their conspiracy. When you ask for evidence, the conspiracy theorists blah blah blah. Boring! The truth is, these people are either clueless or they are being paid to ridicule the topic in order to turn people away. Even before I started researching this subject, I knew that chemtrails were real just by looking at them. Seeing completely blue skies turn into milky, misty, otherworldly looking alien skies, it just gets so ugly and you could see the hazy particles in the atmosphere all day. Furthermore, just take a quick look at the infamous NASA document that was leaked in 2001. It goes over aerosol warfare. So check this out. This was written by Dennis M. Bushnell, Chief Scientist at NASA Langley Research Center. Future Strategic Issues, Future Warfare, circa 2025. The future is now. There are many things in the pages of this document. I just want to briefly show you page 43, Microdust Weaponry. A mechanical analog to biomicron-sized mechanized dust which is distributed as an aerosol and inhaled into the lungs. Dust mechanically bores into lung tissue and executes various pathological missions. And here on the bottom, a wholly new class of weaponry which is legal. So is the future in 2025 or is it now? You know, that really doesn't even matter. If this paper was released in 2001, then they obviously have been working on things like this and programs like this for many years, most likely many decades. And the paper says circa 2025, which means roughly 2025. I think depending on how you look at it, the time we're living in now can be defined as roughly 2025. And check this out. We go to metabunk.org where this dude named Chuck is like, I found this supposed NASA document. Is it real? And Mick West replies, it's not a new document. It's an old PowerPoint presentation from 2001. There's nothing new in it that's not in many other books and papers on the future of war or futurism in general. Then it just goes on talking that usual Mick West bullshit. So this presentation is nothing to worry about because it's a few years old? Are you kidding me? At least he tried, I guess. After all, he is only an employee for someone that doesn't want information getting out. But still, fuck Mick West. We're gonna hop into this segment on geoengineering from the documentary Shade, the Motion Picture. I highly recommend watching this documentary. The chemtrail piece is top-notch and very compelling. It just might be the ticket to changing some stubborn minds. So definitely share this with people. Let's roll it.
If you control the weather, you control everything. You control every food supply and literally every political system.
So what is geoengineering? Well, it's simply the manipulation of our weather by foreign agents. Geoengineering is now defined as large-scale manipulation of the planetary environment. This is to counteract man-made climate change. This is what the Royal Society published. This is what they put out. So this is their definition, their term of geoengineering.
We have this issue, which we all have to address and is of major importance to all of us, to know that people are modifying our weather. Thus, we have to look at the facts that can be proven about what's going on in the atmosphere, about what's happening, about water vapor and its impacts, about the climate and the weather modification programs that are ongoing. These are real. The public has, relatively speaking, been kept in the dark about geoengineering, schemes, plans, global geoengineering governance, and the fact that right now, under research, anyone in the world can start conducting these experiments. So we have people artificially modifying our weather in the western states. California, Pacific Gas and Electric Company, or the city of Los Angeles. It's being modified by the Texas Weather Modification Board in Texas. Colorado, Idaho, Wyoming, lots of other states are all modifying our weather and changing our climate, with extreme implications.
We believe many of them are told that what they're doing is very good for the planet, perhaps saving the planet through this climate remediation.
Do these operations exist? Absolutely. Just look at the US GCRP, or the United States Global Change Research Program. Congress has approved it. It goes up to the presidential supplemental budget. It is absolutely known that they are funding these geoengineering operations.
Our nation and many other advanced nations have been manipulating the weather for some time now. Through government white papers and even IPCC United Nations documents, we know that geoengineering is occurring.
The IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, has been meeting for various years on this subject. They have produced reports dating back from 1999 on aviation impacts on the global atmosphere from water vapor and other issues, depleting beneficial atmospheric ozone and other problems. A group of geoengineers, a clique, essentially a small clique, has decided that the answer to our global warming problems are to release particles and chemicals into the atmosphere. David Keith, Ken Caldeira, and a small group of these men affiliated with various universities have promoted this for a long time. One of the things that the geoengineering promoters, this clique, has been doing is that they have been able to keep any voices that would be in opposition to them or want to know about the impacts off the record. In other words, that they have become the experts to go to, and that the public and other people have no say. They go to meetings, they go to U.S. congressional hearings, which were held on geoengineering in 2009 and 2010, 3 of them by the U.S. House Science and Technology Committee. They also went to hearings of the UK Parliament during the same period of time to talk about global geoengineering governance and why these experiments should go forward. One of the people promoting geoengineering is Gregory Benford. One of his papers about doing experiments in the Arctic was that they could conduct these experiments, geoengineering experiments in the Arctic. The people there could live within the experiment. And if any harm came to them, it was okay to sacrifice them in that area in order to conduct this research, because the research was very important for them to do. The other thing he noted in an interview was that you could very easily take a little bit of aluminum and a little bit of barium, and you could produce these clouds and have impacts very easily in the atmosphere.
You've got to, in a sense, engineer all these so you get the right kind of clouds for the effects we want.
It is called geoengineering, fighting global warming by putting a chemical dust in the atmosphere and reflecting harmful radiation back into space.
You could use barium oxide, for example, which makes big fluffy clouds. You could use tiny little bits of aluminum, which is benign in the environment, and essentially manage the climate.
I was concerned about this attitude that it was okay to do this research, and that we, all of us around the world, should be willing to live in their research experiment. And this is unacceptable.
Geoengineer David Keith made a statement a couple of years ago. He said geoengineering gives man godlike power. Now, I've never chased godlike power. Probably very few of the listeners, unless they're the elite who are checking this film out, have not chased godlike power, but it must be one hell of a rush. And I think what most of us can relate to is maybe a relative or a friend who became addicted to a drug. And in that drug addiction, they have put their health and their family members' health at risk in order to get the rush of that drug. What we're finding in rain tests now around the world is what people are calling the chemtrail geoengineering footprint of aluminum, barium, and strontium. These metals match a number of geoengineering patents that were actually designed to specifically spray these metals out of airplanes into the sky for the stated goal of cooling the planet. They match what geoengineers deny they're spraying but state that they want to start spraying.
If we take ground-based tests, for example, it does not prove the source of the pollution that we're finding in our soils, our air, and our water. It only tells us that something is happening which is not good, that aluminum is increasing, that barium is increasing in soil tests, water tests, and that associated problems are there. There is a belief or an opinion that the jets that leave these persistent jet contrails are spraying something into the atmosphere that would impact our health or cause other types of problems. I noticed when I started doing research in 2002 was that the trees in Mendocino County, Lake County, and other areas of Northern California were in extreme decline. It wasn't from anything we could ascertain because it was whole suites of tree species. That means redwood trees, that means oak trees, that means manzanita, that means Douglas fir. It began to occur to many of us that this decline, killing our trees, is removing a beneficial asset for all of us because the trees provide the oxygen that we breathe. They take in carbon dioxide. The trees are beneficial for maintaining stable climates. They're beneficial for watersheds, for the water we drink and the snow that comes through. All the trees that we have are assets of not only the United States but this world. At this time, there is absolute admissions by NASA that persistent jet contrails and the man-made clouds they produce are having an impact on climate. So when NASA gets involved with the military in atmospheric releases of aluminum oxide, trimethyl aluminum, and other particulates, they know that this will have a reflective quality, that the particles will stay in the atmosphere for some period of time before they come back to Earth, and that this will reduce the amount of direct sunlight reaching the Earth. If we rely on the belief system that we believe this without factual proof, then we're in trouble because everyone is going to think that we're a nutcase, and that's what the astrobiologists at NASA say about people who believe in chemtrails. They say, well, we don't have any proof, we're nutcases. And therefore, our voices are marginalized and have been since the 1990s. Starting in 1996, the U.S. Air Force declared that chemtrails was a hoax. The EPA, all of our government agencies had declared that it was an internet hoax, a conspiracy theory. And thus, since I can't define the word chemtrails as there's no definition legally except hoax, I declined to use this term because it would marginalize my voice and the voices of those using it. The one thing we know and can prove is that rocket programs and atmospheric releases from rockets from the military and NASA and other agencies are releasing particles and chemicals into the atmosphere which can have negative effects on us. Some of the same that are said to be released by jets leaving persistent jet contrails.
Well, the Air Force has been wanting to control the weather for some time. In fact, they wanted to force multiply storms. They wanted to be able to create droughts, create rainfall. Rainfall didn't exist. In fact, in Bosnia, when they were doing the war in Bosnia, they were actually seeding the clouds so that there would be no fog in the area.
There's a military document called Owning the Weather by 2025. That's an expressed interest of our military. Aerosols are required to corporatize and control our weather. What we see in the sky on a regular basis, these long white trails that do not dissipate, they actually form artificial clouds and block the sun, is an expressed goal of geoengineers.
Aerosols are discussed in these papers time and time again. So what are these aerosols?
They talk about how they need to spray these metal particulates less than 2 microns in diameter into our upper atmosphere to shield us from radiation, and this is supposed to be good for us.
David Keith talked about using aluminum oxide to be released by small airplanes or jets. And he talked about having to use water vapor as the medium, whereby an aluminum oxide gas could be sprayed into the water vapor produced by jets, and that the rate of flow, by controlling it, they could control the size of the particles. And the smaller the particle size in controlling this process, the longer these particles would remain in the atmosphere.
The metal particulate, which are nanoparticles, they act as what's called cloud condensation nuclei. So when they're introduced into the atmosphere, instead of water, when it evaporates, condensing and forming as clouds, it will actually condense on this metal particulate, and instead of falling as rain, it drifts. At night, those aerosols act as a blanket, and they trap heat and actually exacerbate global warming. We've seen a great increase in nighttime highs since these programs have really been ramped up in the past 10 to 15 years.
We know from research recently conducted by Stanford Studies and earlier research by NASA that persistent jet contrails change our climate and are warming areas now like the Arctic and Alaska, and that aviation impacts, because water vapor is a greenhouse gas, is beginning to increase these temperatures each year dramatically over time. The issue becomes for all of us with water vapor is that it's a greenhouse gas, it's one of the major players in warming, and the jets producing the man-made clouds, according to NASA, are increasing warming. The powers that be do not want to talk about water vapor and its impacts, because we could take care of that problem right now very easily by putting restrictions on the amount of water vapor that aviation produces. This small click is not offset with anyone talking about the impacts that these programs would have on air pollution, water pollution, crop production, the reduction of direct sunlight reaching the earth on human health, the reduction of direct sunlight on solar panel power production.
A big concern of ours is this: geoengineering programs shred our ozone. Geoengineers are very open about this. Anytime you put particulate aerosols into our atmosphere, it will affect the ozone. We now have a major ozone hole over the northern hemisphere.
The chain reaction that occurs begins to reduce the amount of direct sunlight and can reduce photosynthesis, which all crops, trees, plants, and everything need to survive.
We now have an issue called global dimming. The Earth is now receiving 20% less sun than it did just a couple of decades ago. So it's of great concern. There's nothing left untouched on the planet that this does not affect.
This is referred to in these documents as SRM, or Solar Radiation Management. And what does solar radiation management mean? It means blocking the sun.
The USDA estimate that crop loss in 2030 will double due to abiotic stress. What is abiotic stress? Abiotic stress is everything that chemtrail geoengineering programs create. It's the drought conditions, it's heavy metal contamination, it's too much moisture, it's also fungal overgrowth. Because our sun is blocked, we have an overgrowth in fungus, which is destroying a lot of our crop.
More molds, mildews, fungus, and pests are able to proliferate because of the warmer temperatures at night caused by the man-made cloud cover produced by the jets.
Geoengineers are very open about the fact that geoengineering creates drought. And if you look at the global drought monitor, most of the world now is in drought. Geoengineers state that geoengineering will create droughts in Africa and Asia. Guess what? We have droughts in Africa and Asia. Every day they spray, they are destroying our protective layer. And again, no ozone, no life on the planet. Many people now are beginning to notice that they burn very quickly when they go out into the sun. The reason for that, again, is our protective layer is being shredded every day. No protective layer, no life on this planet.
These experiments, and with global weather patterns and with jet streams and all kinds of things, can get out of hand and can have impacts on people worldwide.
And they're actually terraforming our planet. That's right, they're terraforming our planet. They're changing the very environment that we live in, and they're making it hard for humans to live in this atmosphere, hard for our plants to live, hard for our animals to live. We are not going to have a future. This is a big issue.
Yes, we can geoengineer our atmosphere, but we're also working on geoengineering the oceans with ocean iron fertilization program, which was and has been initiated to show that it's not successful and causes harm to our oceans.
We're seeing the ramifications of this geoengineering in our everyday lives. We're seeing soil being polluted with the agents that are being sprayed: barium, aluminum oxide, and strontium.
Now what happens is when the chemtrails start to descend upon the Earth, it oxidizes into what's known as aluminum oxide. This acidifies the soil, devastating crops, water. It can go in and actually make so fish can't take oxygen from the water anymore. This causes them, of course, to die. And we also have research from New Jersey that shows that not only full-grown plants, but seedlings are devastated by this as well.
Aluminum in soils is not good for tree health because aluminum gets into the tree roots, and then it prevents the trees from uptaking enough moisture, water, and nutrients to survive. And so it looks like the trees are dying because of lack of water and drought, when in reality, once aluminum is into the root system, they can be dying because they can't uptake the natural things that they need, nutrients and water, in order to survive. The Texas Weather Modification Board has authorized the use of sea salt as a particulate that's used. Well, every time those clouds rain out after they have been seeded with salt, salt reaches the earth. And it's going to have its impact on freshwater systems, marine life, agriculture, crop production, because the more salt in the soil you have, the less productive it becomes.
Through the sterilization of our soils and thus the destruction of our crops, natural organic farmers are now having a difficult time growing natural organic food.
I mean, we have percolate in the vegetables. We have all kinds of things going on, rocket fuel, gas, all these horrible contaminants, and I can tell you it's from what they're doing in the sky.
The chain reaction that takes place will reduce the amount of food that the earth can provide for us, because it changes the soil, changes the pH, and reduces the power generation that plants need, photosynthesis, for growing tall and strong.
The concern for many of us is that if these programs continue, we will not be able to grow anything naturally unless it's a Monsanto abiotic stress resistant genetically modified seed. A number of these crops are what are called terminator seeds. They do not regenerate. So year after year after year, the farmer has to go back to Monsanto, which literally puts the farmers in complete debt. The farmers that are not able to recoup their losses due to the flooding, due to the drought this summer, now are selling their crops for pennies on the dollar. There's a company that's owned by George Soros now that is buying up that property, again at pennies on the dollar. That's an objective of Agenda 21. Once these entities have complete control, they can literally control what crops grow, how much grows, how many people get food. These are natural systems. But through the death and destruction of our natural systems, they come in with their solution, which is genetic modification. And in that genetic modification, they literally usurp the authority of nature or the authority of God, and they bring it under the authority of corporations. The sun drives life here on our planet. We need vitamin D3, which nourishes us, produces certain hormones. Vitamin D deficiency is something that's very common now.
It reduces the amount of direct sunlight that hits our skin when we're outdoors, causing a lack of vitamin D in humans. This lack of vitamin D from this man-made cloud cover and these reflective particles leads to human health problems, which are already being identified in the United States. One of them, in recent years, has been the advance of rickets, which is almost an epidemic proportion. Not since the time when children were forced to work in coal mines at the turn of the century, instead of going to school and being outdoors during the day, have we seen an epidemic of rickets like is occurring across the United States at this time.
We have aluminum, which we know is linked to Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, other neurological disorders.
We have seen aluminum-related illnesses go through the roof in Riverside County. We've had over 260% increase. We have autism, ADD, and again, Alzheimer's, all going through the roof.
I came to the conclusion that aluminum-coated fiberglass, or chaff particulates, were used by the ton and released worldwide by the ton for many, many years. These particulates stay in the atmosphere for approximately 20 hours, more or less.
Aluminum, according to the physicians that we've spoken to, actually builds up in the body, so it will accumulate, and if it's not flushed out or chelated, it will compromise the health of an individual. Barium compromises our immune system.
What this means is that after barium exposure, you're actually more prone to virtually all diseases across the board.
We have seen respiratory mortality go from number 8 down to number 3 in the past 6 years. The day-to-day breathing in of these heavy metals will impact our health in a very negative way, leading to cancers and a number of other illnesses.
We do know from studies that putting sulfur up means that it's going to come back down. And in the state of California, it is noted that sulfur can cause reproductive toxicity. And the state of California is required by law to notify the public of any chemicals that can cause cancer or reproductive toxicity, and sulfur is definitely on this list. So these programs are dangerous to us and should be controlled, and the public should be more informed, and that no individual corporation should be able to conduct these programs without public oversight and public consent. And this is a major issue that we're going to be facing in the future more and more.
For your information, geoengineering, also known as chemtrail, is taking place globally, and there are millions of people, scientists, doctors, that know what's going on. Has anybody been looking at the skies here today? Because it went from clear blue for many days, and now we've got crisscrosses all over the sky. My barium was 150 in February. Now it's 190. I also have low blood platelets, which is a problem with clotting, okay? I also have rainwater. If anybody would like to volunteer to drink some. Anybody want to drink some rainwater? It has aluminum in it. And I'm going to tell you how much it has in it. 321 parts per billion, 7.4 for barium, and 5.5 for strontium. Trevor Bajoria of the Department of Environmental Quality says this is safe to drink. Anybody want to drink some? I don't. I stay at home. I am disabled and getting more disabled because of what is in our atmosphere.
Excuse me, sir, but your time's up.
Well, extend it. You can extend it. Okay, she spoke for 20 minutes with a high school chemistry class. There's a lot more information out there than that. This is terrible, and you are all being affected by this, and you better wake up, look up, and realize what's being dumped upon us. This is for real. Our own government, the United Nations, is making us sick, and you better wake up. Thanks for the extra time, okay?
Thank you.
I want some answers in writing.
Thank you.
A lot of people like to say, well, no, it's not from chemtrails, it's not from air traffic. If that's the case, fine. Where are the toxins coming from? We need to know this. All of us need to know this because it's in our blood. It's in your kid's blood. It's in your blood. It's in your hair. It's in your bones.
The point is we all live in different households. We live in different parts of the county. Some live also in different parts of the state. We have a couple from Phoenix. We drink different water because the first thing they were trying to throw at us, oh, it's in the water. I did immediately a test. I paid out of my own pocket to see my water if there was any barium. The water is completely clean. No barium at all.
The health department put on a little dog and pony show here locally, trying to, in my opinion, placate the public and try and explain where barium might come from, other sources like Brazil nuts, which I don't eat.
The county tried to discredit us, say, okay, this is in some sort of a magic food, like nuts from Brazil or stuff like that. Come on. First of all, I eat my own food, I grow my own food, and we all eat from different households. We don't live in a commune, okay? So forget the food. I'm not surprised. I mean, let's look at the history. In the last 100 years, it's been proven and completely declassified information. They've been experimenting on people without their consent or will or knowledge. So let's not try to say, oh, my government will never do that. They already done it. Now the point is what they're going to do next.
This next story is so unbelievable, we didn't think it could possibly be true. But after receiving thousands of records and declassified reports from the Army, it's confirmed that during the Cold War, the United States military conducted secret tests on unsuspecting people in the city of St. Louis.
Lisa Martino-Taylor's life work has been to uncover details of the Army's ultra-secret military experiments carried out in St. Louis and other cities during the 1950s and 60s.
This study was secretive for a reason. They didn't have volunteers stepping up and saying, yeah, I'll breathe zinc cadmium sulfide with radioactive particles.
These Army archive pictures show how the tests were done in Corpus Christi, Texas in the 1960s. In Texas, planes were used to drop the chemical, but in St. Louis, the Army placed chemical sprayers on buildings and station wagons. City officials were kept in the dark about the tests. The Cold War cover story was that the Army was testing smoke screens to protect cities from a Russian attack. The truth, according to Martino-Taylor, was much more sinister.
After enough time goes by, the truth either gets completely hidden or it gets exposed, but still nobody does anything about it. We have to do something about this.
Alright, so if you watched all of that, I really appreciate it. I'm going to end this video with a clip of a video that I found on the Of Geometry channel entitled Pilots, Doctors, and Scientists Tell the Truth About Chemtrails. Check out that channel for some good chemtrail videos. As always, this is ODD TV. Thanks for watching.
Aircraft trail is very similar in many ways to when you go outside on a cold day and exhale, you create a condensation trail. That little cloud is a condensation trail. Now, if you take a 2-mile walk on a cold day and you can turn around and you can see your condensation trail tracking all the way back for 2 miles. That's how crazy it is to think that what we're looking in the sky is actually...
Don't forget to subscribe.